work starts today, the work starts now. You don't have a successful Black Friday, Cyber Monday by ignoring the work that needs to get done up until November 1st. Welcome back to the Money Medicine Podcast, where we discuss strategies to grow your healthcare business, tools to accelerate that growth, and how top practices and pharmacies are executing and winning. All right, we are back with another episode of the Money Medicine Podcast, and today we are debriefing, deep diving on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, as we are just wrapping this up, regardless of the time of when you are listening to this episode. We just had a great weekend for a lot of our clients. Logan obviously joined as on the podcast with us as always. We'll be able to speak from his perspective, kind of being in it, being in the store, being at the pharmacy, and give some shed some light on his Black Friday, Cyber Monday, kind of holiday sale. But ultimately, with this episode, we just want to educate you guys as listeners to kind of what we saw across our clients, what Logan saw, some perspectives, some lessons, some learnings, so that if you did not take advantage of this weekend, which by the end of this episode, I know you're going to want to. Unfortunately, we are 360 some days away from the next one of these, but there'll be some nuggets and some lessons in here that will help you with future holiday sales as well as Black Friday, Cyber Monday next year. And so this is definitely probably an episode that I would advise of all the ones that we've done that I would not want to miss because it'll probably cost you the most money. So,
Absolutely.
let's talk about it, man.
Well, I'm interested because, when we're looking at sales and money right now, I think a lot of people are in that perception that people aren't spending money. We had all the COVID funds, and I just don't know if that's still a dirty word or not, but we had all like the COVID funds, and then all of a sudden, right, those payments stopped, and then now there's rising prices for a lot of goods and services. What did you see across the board as far as were sales up, were sales down? I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely some reports that come out, I think, in the next couple of weeks from like the different credit card companies and stuff like that release some data. I want to say Visa does some stuff around the holidays. I know in like pre-Black Friday consumer, surveys and such, people were planning on spending, I think 72%. Shopify released some data. I think we talked about a little bit a couple episodes ago, but I mean, they overwhelmingly, more than 50% of people suggested they were going to spend as much or more than they did in 2022. And I think depending on, the person listening to this, maybe it looks a little bit different, but I know at least for me, and my wife, I mean, we're setting aside money specifically for this weekend. We ended up sitting out on our hands because we didn't like the deals on some of the items that we were hoping that they would go on sale, but the brands didn't put them on there. But I think, again, anecdotally, we set aside money. I think a lot of people set aside money. And then I know with the pre-Black Friday surveys, people were suggesting that they're going to spend a lot. Now, again, some data, this doesn't speak for the entire world, of course, but I mean, Shopify had 20% increase in spend across their platform. They've obviously grown, big e-commerce platform. They reported strong numbers, all 4 days, record breaking in many ways. So I think the brands that marketed well, that prepped well, that worked kind of the year in advance probably had pretty good weekends, and we can talk about that. And I think those that didn't, probably didn't have as good of a weekend. Obviously, price point of product and all those different things are going to play a factor. If you're in the car business, this episode is probably not super helpful for selling a $50,000 plus item. But if you're selling, consumer goods that are, $100, $150, $200 or less, $300 or less, like it could have been a very good weekend for you. And I think people had the funds largely to be able to shop.
No, I would agree. I think a company really to look at, and I was shocked by this, was like Gymshark. Gymshark had some insane sales, and I know that they were just like everyone and their brother was going through and buying Gymshark stuff. So I think
did you stock up?
I got some gifts for my nieces, but yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I was shocked on some things, some services that you were, like how you had mentioned. I was really hoping that they'd offer more because I probably would have spent more money. But on the flip side, I think, the companies, and I'd love to see some data on this. I think the companies that came out best were ones that were offering larger discounts, and also offering it on more items, to where it wasn't like Rep Fitness, for example. They only were discounting very specific items, and when you looked at like the breakdown, you're like, I'm saving $200 on a $2,000, piece of gym equipment. That's still kind of a mouthful of to kind of like spend. So, for some individuals, for others, not so much.
Yeah.
But so I'd be really curious to see the difference in not only different markets on how it came out, but also different pharmacies, because right, we've got some people who are in rural areas, other people who are in big cities, um, and I would be very curious to see if there's a big upwards trend or downwards trend.
In their sales.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously can't speak for independent pharmacies as a whole by any means, but in terms of the clients that we work with that did do holiday sales, I mean, it was a really really strong weekend. For what was probably cool, maybe the coolest part was not necessarily um, the massive percentage increases for some clients of year over year. I mean, we had a client that did over $125,000, which was cool, but I think it was also equally for the clients that this was their first Black Friday Cyber Monday. Like this was the first weekend when it went from like I'm strictly a consumer on this holiday to I can be a producer, I can sell something, and oh by the way, people will buy it, and like this can be a money making holiday for me. And so I think like getting those texts, getting those emails, and seeing those sales probably were more meaningful for me because I know that it just like lit the fire under that client to understand like why we do all the work leading up to this weekend. And so in so many ways, like it can be a Super Bowl like weekend for a brand and pull massive numbers or, be a big kind of pull forward in some sales. But the work is done, well in advance. And so I think like one of the big takeaways that I kind of had from Black Friday and this weekend, especially if you're listening to this, is like, this is not a holiday where you strictly spin up an e-commerce site, you throw 35% off, and then you just like make one post about it on Facebook. Like, this is a holiday where if you did the work, if you built the trust, if you had the rapport built with dozens or not dozens, hundreds, thousands of people, if you built your email list, if you kind of got your ad campaigns and stuff like that dialed in and some lessons learned, like then this was a robust, amazing holiday. And so I think there were plenty of examples of some other pharmacies and stuff and practices that we don't work with that I saw just like throw up sales, and some of them maybe still have some access to some things, so I kind of could see under the hood a little bit, but it's like you didn't do the work up to it. And so like this is again a extremely rewarding holiday if you did the work. It is not a rewarding like just throw 35% off. And actually an analogy and a story that came to mind when I was thinking about that was one time I went to dinner with this Russian dude, and I'll never forget his accent. And he was telling the story of a guy going in and shopping for shoes. And the guy said to him, "Hey, I'm looking for a size 11. Do you carry it?" And the guy says, "Hey, we have that shoe, but we don't actually have it in a size 11. I'll give you the 10 and a half, and I'll give it to you $20 off." And the guy was like, "No, I'm good. I'm really looking for a size 11. And the guy said, "Hey, I get it. I can do $30 off for this 10 and a half. Are you interested?" And they kind of haggled back and forth a couple times. And finally, the gentleman that was shopping said, "A shoe that doesn't fit is not a bargain at any price." And the big takeaway there for anyone listening to this is you can't throw a discount on a website for supplements, or, we'll just use supplements in this example, because if your patients don't know what to buy, it doesn't matter how much the product is. Like, they're not going to spend $30, even if it's a $50 item, you discounted it 40%, if they don't know what supplement they should buy. And so if you did the work leading up to this point, educating people and helping them understand what products would be most beneficial for them, and they had that confidence, they understood what they would need to buy, a deal can, a discount can have a, major impact on demand. But again, if they don't know what to buy and they're not in the market for what you're selling, the discount is irrelevant.
Right. No, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I'll just throw some highlights to maybe give some perspective. Like I said, we had a client do as much as 125,000. We had multiple clients do multi five figures. We had some clients make their first sales. We have clients have their first $1,000 plus days. So like I want to emphasize like this can be an extremely successful holiday for you as a healthcare business, but the work doesn't start November 1st. Like the work starts today to build the assets, which we'll talk about to have a great weekend. And so if you do the work, you can have hundreds of percentage points, if not thousands of percentage points growth from this year to next year. But that work kind of starts today.
Right. And I would say a piece of looking at it, and I'd love to know your input, is not only, email marketing or, social media, but also a component is even the good old paper and into a bag, or speaking with every patient that comes up to your register or your MA who's checking them out at the end of the day. You say, hey, by the way, don't forget we're having this going on. I mean, just today I had people still calling me, hey, is your sale going on still? And it's like, oh, sorry, you missed out. Like maybe next year,
Yeah.
we'll have it again. But I'd love to know your take on is there one type of marketing that kind of kings another?
Yeah, for the holiday. I mean, I think overall, you it somewhat depends on your kind of maybe financial situation and stuff. I mean, I think the easy way to think about it is if you have no money, it's going to take a lot more like hard lifting, lever, work. If you didn't have a marketing budget, if you had no marketing budget, which I hate that term because it's just really a made up terminology. Everyone has a marketing budget. The return's there. But like if you had no money, I would say, hey, make sure every time someone walks into your pharmacy or walks into your practice, someone is communicating verbally to tell them about like the sale that's coming up. Now that's painful. That's pain. Like you're still paying, right? But just in the form of effort and energy and then like
Right.
coaching and making sure your team is doing it. If that is not your situation, online marketing does extremely well during the holidays. I would say, email list is going to be probably your cheapest way to drive revenue. Of course, like organic social posts and stuff like that will also do well. The problem with organic social posts on social media is typically on a weekend like that, there's so many ads being run that you're probably not going to get much organic distribution because just the news feeds and stuff are overwhelmed with ads. So, I mean, for us, the big levers, or I guess the big drivers of revenue for our clients was email, for sure was one of the massive ones. And then ads specifically towards, retargeting, very engaged customers that showed a ton of interest in buying product or have bought from you in the past. Maybe it's been a couple months or even they purchased from you recently and you want to let them know about the sale. So, ultimately you're looking for the cheapest ways to drive revenue and the easiest way to communicate directly with your customer, and email is likely going to lead that charge. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we're so big on it.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I would be interested kind of also to, so you do your email marketing, how much of that is driving into the store? So those individuals maybe who live closer to the store location versus those individuals who maybe live further out and know, were those individuals who came in maybe bought more versus maybe some of the individuals online who don't know about XYZ product, right? So then they have, like you mentioned, you can throw on that 35%, but if people don't know what they should be buying, they're not going to buy it because they're not going to understand what the product is, right?
Yeah, I think in store it can be a great opportunity for you. Of course, if you're open, like depending on the hours of your business, like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you might only be open Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So that entire weekend, if you're closed Saturday, Sunday, and in store is your only way for people to purchase from you, those are 2 days you're just not going to be able to sell. Now, you could potentially lean into that and drive more demand on Friday and Monday because people know they can't shop Saturday, Sunday. But I would argue you obviously want to make things convenient and easy for your customers. So you definitely want to have online as a component. I think, in store, to your point, you can do a lot of educating. People can walk in and it's a great time to have a conversation with your patients, talk to them about a product, and then like, oh, by the way, we're actually doing a sale this weekend. So if you thought about this and then wanted to buy it next week, it would be 35% more expensive or 25% more expensive because they're running the sale. So I think in store, you could definitely make a conscious effort with your staff to communicate with patients, especially to like, hey, this would be a great time to stock up. Like the shelf life is actually 12 months. So if you wanted to, you could buy your next 3 months worth. I know you love this product, and then you can lock in some kind of cash and move some additional product and probably lighten your, lighten your inventory, and put some cash back in your bank, and back in your pocket. So I think online versus in store, we'd have to collect some data to obviously see who spent more. I think in person, you probably have more influence per se, so you can sell more in person. But again, it's not like it was 10, 5 even years ago,
Right.
20 years ago, when people are like standing outside of a store waiting for the slider to get lifted up and then like stampeding in, and people are dying. Thankfully, I don't know about you, but I didn't see any like stampede violence, deaths in the news for Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. So maybe that's a net positive
Right.
that kind of shopping is away or is gone. But yeah, I can't stress enough. Online shopping is a big component of it. And I think from what we saw across our clients is people were more willing to shop on Friday and more willing to shop on Monday online. And the weekends were actually where they were doing their in-store. So, consumer trends were obviously a lot of people still have to work on Friday. A lot of people still have to work on Monday. So Saturday, Sunday, we saw a much more like, kind of lower return on ad spend. More people, I think with some reports that we saw, just like that's their shopping day, get out of the house and go in store to the stores that they can't go to on Friday or Monday. So I think if I was going to allocate ad spend, I would be aggressive on Friday and Monday. Saturday and Sunday, if I am open, I would just, make sure that I had the team kind of trained for that. But that's kind of what I think the consumer breakdown is and kind of how people shopped. And that would be consistent with what I did personally, as well.
Yeah, from what I saw, really most of the people who are shopping, depending on when you started your sale, right? Because you're only going to be able to get the amount of money that somebody has at that time point, right? If they bought from somebody else who had a sale going before yours, and they spent more of their kind of free cash per se that they could have spent with you, you're not going to get that, and they're probably not going to have as many sales. Um, but the point of what I'm trying to get across is we started our sale early. For us, we had probably in one day, probably right close to 33% of our monthly sales in one day. Just because we started from my 2 cents is because we started early and we were kind of beating out some of the competition. Not only that, but everyone who was picking something up, there were the questions of, is there anything else that you're looking for that you normally pick up? Because right now is a really good time to buy because it's 20% off. Like, cool. Or like, hey, do you have any other issues going on? And then you're finding out something else. Oh yeah, I've got some anxiety. Or like, my cousin Timmy's got XYZ. Cool. Well, let's hook Timmy up with some lion's mane because that's going to help out his anxiety. Oh yeah, perfect. I'll get that for him for Christmas. Or, I'm going to see him afterwards because little Timmy's a little obese, and so we're going to give him something to help his blood sugar out and, make sure he doesn't eat too much on Turkey Day, right? So there's a lot of ways to take advantage of that, I think, in store. But you have to have boots on the ground, and everyone kind of has to be on the same kind of board. And so make sure you train your staff on asking those questions, and at least just ask them like, hey, if anything else, right now you're going to save 20% off. Do you want to just get one more bottle so that way next month, because this is something that you get every month, like just get it today so that way you don't have to come back and get it later. Cool.
Yeah.
That was really big. Whereas like online, I think a lot of it deals with presence. Not only that, but for myself, like I would much rather purchase online because once again, like you said, you don't have to go to the store.
Yeah.
For example, I wasn't even in a rush to go to most stores that I normally go to. And I think that's a big trend that we're going to shift towards is, for certain things, you just aren't going to go there anymore. It's just all going to be online.
Yeah.
So, which makes it interesting. So we have this big trend switching to online. How big of that is like mobile shopping trends? Are we seeing a lot more people taking like geofencing through? And I know that's kind of a tricky question, but if are we geofencing more locations for targeted ads, or what are you seeing kind of throughout?
Like driving online, like mobile sales, or what do you mean?
Right, driving online mobile sales. So like more targeting like locations that um, maybe an individual will walk into. So like taking your ad, running it across, um, Taco Bell, right? Or all these food stops, and then running an ad directly because they cross that geo fence into, um, a weight loss bundle.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I think the we're gonna answer this question direct. So I think the geofence thing is just like a coin term that people say that like no one understands, and all these like radio stations and TV networks say all this stuff, and largely are just selling you stuff they don't understand. What you can do to kind of Logan's point, because I think we hear this all the time from like pharmacies and healthcare, is that like, oh, I want to like geofence GNC and I want to run ads when any person walks into GNC. Like that, you don't have to do that. One, you can if you want to. I would argue it's a waste of time and you're focusing on the wrong thing. But what you can do with these platforms is you can target people based on interest. So it doesn't have to be that they went to Taco Bell, but if they engage with Taco Bell's content or they follow Taco Bell's Facebook page, you can run ads to those people. And so again, depending on the context of the product that you sell, there are a bunch of different audiences that you can ultimately build in Facebook, both from your own, patient data, your own kind of social media following, people that are like the people that follow you or like your patients, or are just interested in general things that likely lead to the purchase of products that you sell. So if you don't know much about Facebook marketing, paid ads in general, I think a YouTube video or two would be extremely enlightening, so you understand how powerful some of these platforms are. And we've had a couple examples of clients who have like paid for like geofencing with like iHeartRadio and different services. And you know, when we show them the actual analytics of some of those efforts, and how they differ from like the PDF reports that you get from said services, a lot of times it is a night and day difference. So again, if you don't know, there's something called Google Analytics, or GA4, is kind of what it's transitioned to. But ultimately, if your marketing is not being tracked, you have no idea what it's ultimately doing. And a lot of people pay for marketing when they don't actually know what it is producing. And so I just encourage you, whatever you pay for, whatever you do, make sure the analytics and tracking is set up properly, so that you do have that data to then decide really the performance and the impact that it had. So I'll make that point there on geofencing, because we hear it all the time. And I think it's just like used too much relative for actually what it is. Now, would I target locally? Would I like run a radius around the pharmacy? Sure. Would I drop a pin on a GNC and run ads to them? No. And partially because I think there is this belief, and I'm just going to rant on this real quick, but like
I like
there's
it.
this
I
belief
love it.
that like your customers are GNC shoppers.
Right.
They're not. Like, look at the average person that goes into your pharmacy. They look nothing like the gym bro that goes into GNC. So like, just because GNC sells supplements doesn't still mean that GNC sells supplements to the same customer avatar as you. And so I think largely that's where the mistake or the problem is like, I'll analogize it this way. If I came to Logan and I wasn't feeling well, and let's just say the solution was supplements, so let's rule out some alternatives. And I was like, hey, Logan, I'm not feeling well. Here's my, whatever. Here's what's going on. Like, what supplements do you recommend for me? I wouldn't tell Logan what supplements to give me, because Logan's the subject expert. Logan is the pharmacist. He knows more about supplements than I do. If you sit down in a marketing call and you're a pharmacist, you're a healthcare business, etc., and you know more than the marketing agency, you know more than the marketing person, and you are telling them what to do, that is a problem. Both from the standpoint of like, you have the wrong mindset. They should be educating you and telling you what to do, because they should know more about how to drive results. And also, too, you are paying them partially, I would hope, for their expertise. And if you are just telling them, you are ignoring all their data, all their experience, hopefully, that they have across their clients, and strictly just telling them what you want. So you're just really paying for them to execute and do what you're telling them, which is like kind of silly too. So all that to say, you wouldn't sit down with a surgeon and tell them not to use the scalpel, not to, numb this, not to sedate you, not to do all that kind of stuff. You'd sit down and just hope the, surgeon does their job and you wake up and you're healed and you're recovered. You really don't kind of care what goes on, and you should default to the expert. But for whatever it is with marketing, there's a lot of like opinions without data. And I think that's where like some of the worst outcomes come from.
I would agree. I want to highlight that expertise piece because I think that also allows somebody to know what their popular products are going to be, right? At this time of year, most people are going to be looking for weight loss products. Most people are going to be looking probably for sleep agents or things to help out with anxiety because they've got great grandma Susie who's going to be coming down, who's partially deaf and, maybe has dementia and runs away, or whatever the scenarios, or you have to deal with an in-law that you don't like. What are some great strategies to prepare for kind of that big inventory purge of those popular products?
Yeah, in terms of moving product, I mean, kind of highlighted a little bit, but I would say, the campaigns, the let's just call them services, that drove the strongest outcomes for clients were for sure email to your list. We did it for some clients that had larger lists, larger email lists, and had kind of more established business, like VIP sales. That's really popular. You'll see that with brands where on either Thanksgiving, kind of 24 hours before the Black Friday sale, or even the weekend before, which is kind of what we did. We gave, kind of VIPs for some clients, like their top 1,000 customers, early access to the sale with a, better discount, or just early access to the sale so they could kind of lock in products, because we knew for some products inventory was going to be an issue. So you can kind of lean into that messaging of like, hey, thank you, and you get early access as a form of thank you. And oh, by the way, I would take advantage of it before the sale starts, because then it's, all hell breaks loose. But outside of email, I mean, ads to warm audiences had ridiculous return on ad spends. Depending on the client, depending on their ad spend, et cetera. I mean, we saw return on ad spend as high as like mid 30s. So like perspective, that means spend $1, get 30 some dollars back in revenue. So that is not typical, but it is just a shopping weekend. I mean, there are tailwinds it's just like consumer psychology. Everyone's weekend is pretty much built around what they're going to shop for, and that's just not the case for other weekends. So I can't stress enough having ads queued for warm audiences, even if it's just to like get the word out that your Black Friday sale is live. It doesn't have to be anything like overly fancy. We had some pretty simple video ads, just letting people know about the shopping, discount over the weekend. That did really well. So you'll have some really high return on ad spend for that. But the other thing I would want to make sure you have too equally is like, this is a great weekend to get people to try your product. And so, if you want to run discounts across your entire product line, awesome. Like, I think that's a great idea, but also you could consider things like, a higher discount on like a great leader, like, product that you can kind of, most people can take, or it would be a great one that you'd want people to like learn from, like kind of have their first experience from your brand with. So like, for example, let's just say you had one product that was a great supplement, but people won't really notice a difference until 90 days later. But you have other supplements that someone takes and they feel a difference within like 2 to 3 days of taking it, right? I would maybe give a higher discount on that product and then lean into the messaging of, hey, if you never ordered from us before, like, here's our top product. We absolutely love it. We recommend it. It flies off the shelf for us, and we're giving it an increased discount, and use it as a way to get people to try your brand, knowing that if they have this positive experience with the supplement, they're probably going to look at your other supplements and not just reorder this one, but also potentially add with other quality supplements. So I think like you want to have a mixed strategy between new customer acquisition, getting new people to try you that have never tried you before but will with this discount, and then take advantage of that warm audience, all the people that have ordered from you already, have ordered from you but haven't ordered maybe in a couple of months, and really giving them the time and attention, because they'll be the easiest and the cheapest conversions in terms of driving sales. So I think that would be like the way to look at it. You want to have like that barbell approach of let's get some new customers and let's also, get a lot of these existing customers back and shopping this weekend.
That makes sense. That makes sense. What what kind of, so you've got somebody who buys a product from you, right? And then you kind of follow them through, their progress. So they clicked on the ad, they bought something. How do you look at that behavior as far as like how long they maybe sat on an item or like where they went throughout your website? What kind of behaviors are you looking for in kind of maximizing your next sale?
Um, that's a good question. Like, give me an example.
So an example would be like, let's say I was doing 20% off on maybe one product and maybe buy one, get one free on another product. Um, how would I know for maybe my next sale to say, okay, maybe I should do more buy one, get one free or buy one, get one half off? How do you build that? How do you track that customer behavior? Is it by setting up different kind of sales styles, or is it trying one sales style throughout one period and then doing another? Like, how would you suggest going about that?
Yeah, so I think from a sales perspective, you want to be thoughtful around like the discount that you ultimately decide to give. I mean, discounts look in different fashions. So a discount could be percent off. I mean, that is just, margin compression for you as you give that discount. But if you do like a gift with purchase, for example, that's still like a discount because you have a cost of the item that you're giving them as a gift with purchase. So I think it ultimately becomes a little bit of a game of math of I would do one, not the other. I wouldn't do both at the same time. It probably wouldn't be like a true fair split test. And so, I mean, so some of this could be done over like a multi-year period. I'm sure you could do some research into this as well, but I would ultimately look for ways to increase perceived value. So, for example, like if you're shopping for beds and they're $1,000 bed, right? Like $200 off sounds bigger than 20% off. Same number, same amount off. One sounds bigger than the other, right? So like
Right.
that is a higher perception of value. Similarly, your discount could be 15% off, for Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, or 30% off Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, whatever the case may be. But maybe a order $100 and get these gifts. Maybe the gifts have a higher perceived value than the 30%. Maybe you have a super cool limited edition gift that seems to be more expensive than $30, but in reality, your cost of goods on that is maybe 20. And so you're able to give customers more value and it costs you less. And so you actually have less of a discount and you have better margins that weekend. So I think whatever you do, like I would run it through the lens of what is most valuable in the eyes of the customer, both in terms of like the actual items, if you're comparing like a discount versus like a gift, but also in the, perception, right? Because it could be, again, 20% off versus $200. You want to be thoughtful around which one sounds bigger. And so, regardless of how you kind of want to spend your discount, whether it's a gift with amount spent, discount with amount spent, or free shipping with amount spent, I think ultimately you want to track it. You want to understand the math of really what you're giving up. And then, again, if you're doing this over a couple of years, you can kind of cross compare and also take a look at like industry averages. So you kind of know what to expect and kind of how you stacked up.
No, I think that's a good point. I really like the amount spent for free shipping because I know that's a big one for a lot of people. Is this my wife even did this with that Gymshark that I mentioned earlier. She's like, well, if we spend another $20, we'll get free shipping. And I was like, well, how much was shipping? And she goes, well, it's $5. And I was like,
It's crazy how much that impacts though.
and I was like, why would we spend another 26 when we don't need that extra item? Granted, I was already kind of thinking about that ahead of time. But
Well, it's like a free item. Like that happens all the time though. It's like if shipping
Right.
was $10 and you're $20 away from from shipping, it's like, well, man, if I add $20 to my cart, I basically only bought that item for 10, so it's 50% off. Like
Right.
all that math and those ideas, whether correct or not, float into the customer's mind. And so for sure, having different options where people are incentivized to spend more is this is a great weekend for it. That doesn't always work. So like you can't just run that on your website every single month. I mean, I think some of
Right.
that will get glossed over, but especially this weekend, like incentivize people to spend more, and it will surprise you, how big of orders you might see.
Absolutely. When I guess with COVID, and I see this with drugs all the time, there's a lot of issues with like supply chain and getting things. I know like berberine or dihydroberberine is a big issue right now. Um, how do you handle that increased demand as well as like making sure you have enough inventory? Like how do you maybe go about that so you can still collect orders even though the product's not quite available? What are some solutions that you would have to offer?
Yeah, I think the biggest lessons on that would be, preparing in advance. It kind of goes without saying, but preparing in advance in the sense of, stocking up on the inventory. Again, if people take you up on buying 2 or 3 bottles or 2 or 3 months worth of inventory, like that means that even without the demand generation that you might be, creating with additional marketing that weekend, um, people are going to buy more like regardless because of the discount. So if you're doing more in marketing and you're giving a discount to where people are incentivized to spend, more because they're going to buy a couple months worth, like you're going to move through a lot of product,
Right.
significantly more than probably what you're accustomed to, kind of as you pointed out with kind of your sales and your increase and, our client increase as well. So prepare in advance, stock up on inventory. You're probably going to need 2 or 3 months worth of inventory. Again, this is going to depend on your marketing. This is going to depend on your spend. This is going to depend on a lot of different variables, but like comfortably, you should move more product. And I think that means obviously getting that product in advance, but also kind of talking to suppliers about, hey, just what does inventory look like if I needed more? Am I able to text you halfway through Black Friday, Cyber Monday and say, hey, I need more, right? Or am I able to email you halfway through the sale and let you know I need more? Because especially, for some clients, they ran into the situation where they sold a lot, which is great, but then there's going to be some delays in getting out some of their later orders just because they thought they were going to have more inventory that they could grab, but they're not able to. So uh, I think selling a lot is a good thing, but ultimately, you don't want to have a situation where people despise you because they don't get the product in a reasonable time frame. I think with the holidays, people are a little bit more understanding, but you don't want it to be too long to where it's damaging to your brand. And so I think selling out isn't necessarily a bad thing. You're leaving some money on the table, but you're also increasing perception of the product. And that's why you see a lot of times brands that will do like these drops where they'll like drop a new clothing item or drop a new shoe or drop a new something and then it sells out in 24 hours. I mean, part of that is because they knew that it was going to sell out and then it would create this perception of their brand that their stuff sells out. Like you buy it now or you don't get a chance at it ever again. And that creates like a trained kind of customer for all their future promotions. And so like, don't be afraid to sell out, but don't not at least get some additional inventory. Like make it kind of hard to sell out for you as well. Like don't just royally underestimate the volumes that you could have on Black Friday and only sell as much as you do on a typical weekend. Like it's pretty comfortable to expect, 50, 100% increase in sales, especially if you're doing a little bit of marketing behind it.
No, that makes sense. I know we have a multivitamin that we like to utilize, and I was like, all right, I'll double my inventory. I should have plenty because normally we sell, X amount of these a month. Um, no, I ran through it in one day, and I was just like texting my rep, "Hey, I need this like ASAP," and I got the normal response, "Hey, it's going to take 3 to 5 days to get to you." And I was just like, well, shoot. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really important piece. Even if you think you have enough, maybe have a little bit extra because, a lot of those products, are going to have a long expiration date anyway. So as long as it's one of your big movers, you're going to move through that product regardless. And it's better to have that product there than have to sit there and be like, well, it's sold out. Like, sorry, can't get it. Um, but in that same piece, um, at least what we did is kind of like what you said. We said like, hey, this is one of our most popular products. This is what a lot of people like. Right now we're out of stock. We can take down your information right now. You can pre-order it right now and pay for it. So that way you'll get that 20% off and then we'll ship it to you.
Yep.
So that way you don't have to come back in the store because we know you live from X, Y, and Z, and that took care of the problem. And by the time I got the product back in stock, we were able to get it out. And so that's an easy way to mitigate some of that. If you do run out, is just, just kind of be honest with them and make sure you take care of your patient.
For sure. For sure. For sure.
How much, and this is something, so I looked at some other competitors on like what their sales were doing, and I tried to understand how they were getting customers to their site. What's the best way to kind of like figure out from what your competitors are doing and kind of implement into your own space? What kind of strategies are you typically, looking at?
Yeah, I think a couple things that you could do that are easy. I would say first look outside of your industry, because you don't necessarily just want to copy what your close proximate competitors do. So I think you can learn a lot from other industries and how they run their sales. So like take a look how Nordstrom runs their sale. Take a look at Nordstrom's email marketing. Take a look at their frequency maybe. And again, if you do this for enough brands, you'll pick up on some trends, some similarities, and probably some nuggets, some lessons, some things that you do, some things that you wouldn't. For competitors, though, I do think it's a good idea to purchase from them at some point. I mean, I think you should purchase from them. I think you should go through their email sequence that you get sent. I think you should pay attention to kind of what their Black Friday sale was, and necessarily kind of what information they put out and how they marketed it. There's a lot to learn on that front. But again, I wouldn't just default to your customers. I would look, or your competitors, I would look at, bigger successful brands, right? Because I think it's similar to so many things. Sometimes your competitors have no idea what they're doing. And so if you just copy them, you will also have no idea what you're doing. And so I'd probably look at very successful brands that had incredible Black Friday, probably Cyber Monday sales volumes, and have had some success. And I would look at getting on their email list, taking a look at their social media. A little nugget for you guys. You can also go to Facebook. You can go to any business Facebook page. You can go to the About menu, and you can click on page transparency, and you can go to what's called the ad library, and you can see anyone's ads that any public business Facebook page runs. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of take a look at what your competitors did or didn't do over the weekend. But I think my biggest emphasis would be like, don't just copy people, because there's plenty of people that don't know what they're doing. And if you just copy without like some thought, you will also have no idea what you're doing.
No, absolutely. I think one of the things that I liked is, and I saw this from a couple companies, it's a up to 60% off, which is an incredible, right, sale when you look at some of those things. But it was only a select items, but it got me to their page. And then it was like, okay, which items are X% off? And so, I think looking at those strategies and saying, okay, can I have a loss leader? Can vitamin D or can, XYZ be my loss leader? I'll just mark that one up, significantly sales, so that way I can market it and be truthful when I say, hey, this is going to be a 70% off sale. And then hopefully from there, get the some additional sales from that, because most people aren't going to want to pay $13 and then have to pay another $5 for shipping, because they're not going to hit that free shipping.
Yeah.
So
I think
that
with
would be
the up
something.
to, I was just gonna say with the up to amount, I think what's interesting about that is I think it can have like multiple effects. Like I think part of the reason why you're seeing more like up to sales, if you will, like up to a certain percentage, is because to your point, there's a higher perception of like the sale. If it says up to 60%, when you actually get on the site, that's not the broad application across the products. But what I think those brands are probably ultimately doing is they know, one, it will bring more people there, but then two, they understand that they have certain products that they don't need to discount as much as others. And so I think part of the lesson there is like we default, and I'm not saying one is right, one's wrong, but I think if you default to just 20% off or 30% off your store, that's assuming that all products have the same demand. And so I think part of the reason some brands didn't discount like their best items, like there was a couch that I was interested in buying, but they didn't discount it at all. They had no sale around it for Black Friday. And I think it's because probably something to the effect of how much inventory they have, and they don't need to move product, like they're maybe low on inventory, so they don't want to discount it. And then also too, they probably knew that a lot of people really like that couch and will pay for it full price. And so it's like, do I really need to discount this? So I think another lesson for next year could be with your discounting some products that maybe you have better margins on, you have excess inventory, and you do kind of want to clear house a little bit. And then for some of your best products, maybe discounting a little bit less to where you protect their margin a little bit, but knowing that people will still take advantage of a super small sale. And then that way you can kind of lean into the marketing of this higher perceived sale, but really you're probably having better margins, you're clearing out inventory, you're protecting the margin of your best selling products, and you're probably a little bit more profitable overall. Again, that's just kind of some anecdotal, if you will, kind of dissection of kind of the difference of the two. But I think that'll be like a sale type that we lean into more next year. Just takes a little bit more coordination to like go product by product and figure out what you're going to discount each one. And so it's a little bit more tedious to do for sure.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I took away from another company as well is we had ordered a product and they had sent us a handwritten note back to us, just saying, yeah, thanks for ordering during our sale. Like, we really appreciate you. And then you know what they did? They gave me another discount code to buy something later.
Yeah.
It was like another 25% off. And I was like, well, I'm probably going to use this at some point because I already like their product. And so that was, we actually started doing that in some of our orders. We're like, hey, thank you so much. Especially like somebody who's been a recurrent order, a
Yeah.
recurrent
Just a
client.
random thank you.
Yeah. Or, we'd throw in a thank you plus a free product. And it would be like a product that I had, might have been cost me like $10, but they're going to be like, oh, I got something free plus they're giving me another discount. Like, that's awesome. No one's ever going to be upset that you gave them something for free.
Yeah.
So,
And that discount too, like to your point, gets them to come back and use it. But if they didn't purchase again, it didn't cost you anything, right? So it's not
right.
like you gave them cash. You just gave them, hey, here's a little bit of, discount if you do come back and spend with me again. So it really doesn't cost you anything to give that discount, other than obviously the missed out, I guess, profit that you would have. But that's only under the assumption that they're going to come back and buy. So I think random thank yous are awesome. Handwritten cards, handwritten notes are amazing. I mean, I got a personal phone call from one of the brands I purchased from of
Oh,
like
wow.
thanking me for business. So I think especially around the holidays, Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, like thoughtful is a really good idea. Just however you kind of want to use that word and implement it. I think being thoughtful and going the extra mile will serve you well, not just this weekend, but in life, but also especially this weekend.
Absolutely. And I think too, another point that, we kind of, I didn't touch on, when you have those back orders, and on those products that the supply chain's kind of broken, one of the things that we're going to be doing, and this is geared towards the one specific product, is the product's now been pushed back again. So we had a pre-order for a product because we're like, okay, this is when it's going to come back. We're going to have it. Now it's
Yep.
been pushed back. So it's like, oh crap, all these people think they're going to get this shipped out on this date and now it's moved. What do you do? And so a couple different strategies that you can do in that situation. I think strategy one is you call them, you say, hey, we can keep your order for the other, if it's a bundle or things of that nature, we can send you that and get that out to you right now. And then we can cancel your other one. You can just take the loss on it and, they'll still get their products. They'll still be happy because they got things on time. Option two, you could substitute it and say, sorry, we don't have that one. We're going to discount something similar and make sure that you still get all the great products, yada, yada, yada. Or option three is you can just say, hey, we're so sorry. This item was so hot that our manufacturer couldn't keep up with us again and had to push it back. We're more than happy to get this out to you. We can substitute something in, and then when your product comes in, we'll just ship it to you. So you can kind of give them a free product that's similar, and then when that product does come in, you can just ship them that product, and then they're happy because they got their original order plus they got something for free, and you're not going to upset that customer, and hopefully they'll come back and respect you for that. So I think that's another thing just to keep in mind, keeping your customers happy because it only takes one person to leave a bad review and then can really affect the business.
For sure.
Um,
For
Kind of with
sure.
that said, how do you plan based on what you did that weekend? Like, what are you tracking um, to try to figure out, okay, for 2024 Black Friday, here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I think, planning to 2024 is, I mean, impossible this far away. But I think the big lesson that I would try to, emphasize is you need tracking in place to be able to even have any shot at forecasting. So if you don't know what you did this year and you don't have clarity around your numbers, your products sold, which products sold, your marketing efforts, what they were specifically, how big your email list was, and how much you spent on ads, etc. Like you're gonna have no reference point for next year. And so I think the first thing for any marketing for sure is tracking, but especially for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, if you're trying to forecast for next year, it's again um, having the tracking, having the reporting put in place, and then also obviously as we get closer to Black Friday, next year, it's how do we stack up compared to this time last year. So it could be like, what is the email list, kind of in difference in size, right? Did your email list double or triple? Well, then like take a look at the performance of email last year and probably assume some sort of 2 to 3x output in terms of revenue that generates. Are you going to spend the same amount in ads this year as you did last year? How much you spent last year, what did it produce? If you spend this much this year, what seemingly would it produce? So I think, again, it all comes down to tracking first. And so if you haven't had the tracking in place, get it in place so that you have some data to work off of for next year. Because again, for some clients, we didn't have Black Friday data the year before, but we had all the data leading up to that point to where we could draw some kind of conclusions and have some expectations of what that weekend could look like for them. So it doesn't have to be necessarily Black Friday data, but it is always great to be able to reflect year over year data. And so it'll at the very least be fun if you have that data to like see how far you've come. And so I think for a lot of clients, it was really cool and special for them to see the percentage increase year over year to motivate them for the following year, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
So
So I know I was shocked when looking at our data, and I looked at 2022 to 2023, and we didn't do a sale last year. So I looked at our numbers, and I was
exactly.
like, look at everything that we missed out on. Even by offering a discount, we could have generated X percent more or number of dollars more. And I will say it was about 8X more than what we would have made in the entire month.
Yeah,
So in 1 week we did that. So really something that you should be looking at and planning for.
for sure. All right, so just to give you guys a quick recap of kind of the things that we emphasize again, go back, rewatch the episode, leaving anything in the comments so that we can expand on it further. We'll have some blogs, we'll have some other things, and definitely some more resources and podcasts on this leading up to next year this time. But some things you want to take a look at is, again, understanding, again, what you did last year to have some sort of indication of potentially what next year should look like. Take a look at websites like No Commerce and such, that Shopify in advance. They do a really good job of kind of just pre-Black Friday surveying to give you an idea of kind of where the consumer's at and potentially what sales and kind of demand could look like. So that would be kind of step one. Another thing to consider would be kind of your online versus offline strategy. If you don't have an online strategy, I would encourage you to fix that problem. But for sure, if you're going to be open, making sure that your ducks are in a row, that your team's notified, that you have incentives in place for your team, et cetera, to be successful and be a little bit more motivated to have those conversations with your in-store visitors. Again, with mobile shopping, if you're trying to drive online sales, et cetera, even in-store sales, really, email lists are going to be a massive driver of revenue, especially this weekend. It's a direct form of communication with your customers. If you take a look at your Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, and you take a look at your email inbox, I'm sure it's flooded. Mine was absolutely flooded. And did I see every email? No, but there was plenty of brands where I just saw what their sale was, and it was enough to get me to their website. And so don't discount the revenue that email drives, it continues to grow in market year over year, and everyone discounts it and thinks that it's the end, but email still is such a valuable asset. In terms of products, again, weight loss this time of year is going to be great, just because of obviously we're getting close to New Year's resolutions. So those types of products are great to lean into. Make sure you have a plan for both your existing audience, your kind of warm audience, as well as cold audiences, to try to get some new people to try you out. Understand that people are going to spend more, and create incentives for them to spend more through different kind of discounts, gifting, etc. Make sure that you stock up on inventory, do some competitor analysis, both in your industry and not. And lastly, make sure that you have proper tracking in place so that you have the data to make clear decisions next year. So again, absolutely massive weekend for so many. And again, it was such a pleasure to play a small role, or play a role in some ways in kind of their success. So if you're listening to this and you didn't have any sort of Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, or it did not perform like you wanted to, there's probably some nuggets in there, some aspects of these 9 critical elements that you did not take advantage of that led to that lack of success. But again, the work starts today. The work starts now. You don't have a successful Black Friday, Cyber Monday by ignoring the work that needs to get done up until November 1st. So do the work, and you can have some incredible results like some of these clients did, like Logan did. Yeah, we'll get you on the podcast, and we'll have to do a recap. We'll just bring on a random listener that listened to an episode and implemented. So again, this was an episode of the Money Medicine Podcast. We'll be back with future episodes, next week with some guests and some new stuff coming up. But again, great episode to listen to if you're looking to drive more sales, drive more supplement sales, and just really maximize the demand that Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend creates. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.